Good morning. I am, as she said, class of 2002, and I am very excited to be back on campus. And I am proud to be here today on behalf of the Council for Women of F&M, what we call the CFW, which is an alumni group dedicated to the fostering of the personal and professional development of Franklin and Marshall women at all life stages, while strengthening their connection to each other and engaging them as active participants in the college community. The Council for Women, the CFW, along with our student partners, which are the Women from A Lot and the Alice Drum Women's Center, are very, very excited to bring Escalation to campus on January 31st. We're going to bring the One Love Foundation here. We'll have the Escalation Workshop, which consists of a really gripping movie and a discussion afterwards, which is led by student facilitators. We encourage everyone who is interested in coming to come. You can actually register today. There's a table set up in the back. It has the CFW banner, and they are ready to register you. You can also register online. Probably the easiest way for me to tell you how to do that is if you like the Franklin and Marshall Council for Women Facebook page. There's a little plug for CFW as well. But if you like us there, you will also see the registration and link so you can sign up there as well. Now it is my pleasure to introduce to you your Common Hour speaker for today, Sharon Donnelly Love. Sharon, we'll talk a little bit about her so you know who she is. Sharon Love, Yardley's mother, she co-founded One Love with her daughter Lexie to honor Yardley's positive spirit. Sharon has been the main driver behind One Love, steering it toward prevention strategies after learning more about the issue in the wake of Yardley's tragic death. Sharon had a 25-year career in the Baltimore City Public Schools, teaching hearing-impaired students before retiring in 2013 to work on One Love full-time. She works tirelessly on the behind-the-scenes tasks of developing a national foundation and has become a well-respected leader on the topic of relationship violence. As the main spokesperson for One Love, Sharon has reached many groups of students at every age level, professionals in the relationship violence arena, and politicians on both a local and national level. And without further ado, Sharon Love.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to speak. It's an honor to be at Franklin and Marshall today. It's hard to believe that 5 years ago, relationship violence was a topic that I knew absolutely nothing about. The topic of relationship violence was never part of our family discussion. My image of relationship violence was that of a stay-at-home mother with several children who was dependent on and unable to leave her abuser. A person that had no means to support herself and her family, a person who was trapped with no way out, a victim of circumstance. I soon learned that the picture in my mind was far too narrow and that relationship violence was a far wider-reaching epidemic than I could have ever conceived. On the morning of May 3rd, 2010, 2 police officers came to my door at the crack of dawn. I had no idea why they were here and hoped they were at the wrong address. As I struggled to get the front door open, I rationalized that maybe my dog's barking had disturbed a neighbor. I knew that made no sense because the dog was sleeping before they arrived, but it was something I could use to make sense of their presence. Once I got the door open, one of the officers asked me if I was Yardley Love's mother, and the rest went blank. Yardley had been beaten to death by her ex-boyfriend less than 3 weeks before she was to graduate from the University of Virginia. Life as my daughter, Lexie, and I had known it was over. Something that never could have happened just did. Yardley began playing lacrosse when she was 5 years old and loved the game. I think it took most of her first Little Tyke season to understand what the word shoot meant. She just loved running and playing with others, and goals were optional. Politeness trumped competition, and the 5-year-olds would readily put down their sticks to help a teammate or an opponent, while parents and spectators protested from the sidelines. At home, much of Yardley's spare time was spent chasing down ground balls and bouncing the lacrosse ball off the garage door. They still bear the dents. Yardley saw the University of Virginia for the first time when she was 10. Her sister Lexie was attending a lacrosse camp at UVA. It was love at first sight. Her bedroom became an homage of blue and orange and the letter V. Her t-shirts, our car stickers, the dog collar, our drinking glasses were all blue and orange with V's. I thought it was a phase, like her infatuation with Full House and Baywatch, but it was much more. It became her dream to attend the University of Virginia and play Division I lacrosse. She worked diligently to achieve that dream. When Yardley was in the 7th grade, her father was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. Both my daughters, Lexie and Yardley, rose to the occasion. They kept up their grades, they remained strong, and they spent many hours pampering their father and taking care of his every need. After a long, valiant struggle, he died 3 years later. They both vowed to make him proud, and they did beyond all of my expectations. Yardley was accepted into UVA and became a member of the women's lacrosse team. She majored in political science and minored in Spanish. She was consistently on the honor roll, enjoyed Kappa Alpha Theta sorority. The summer of freshman year, Yardley took classes at UVA and helped out with lacrosse camp. Sophomore year, she studied abroad in Valencia, Spain. Summer of her junior year, Yardley took an internship in New York with the designer Tibby. After graduation, Yardley planned to spend a year in New York and then attend law school. Her future was bright. Life was almost as good as it gets until her ex-boyfriend kicked in her door while she slept and beat her to death. How could this have happened? When I dropped Yardley off in Charlottesville, Virginia, her first year, my biggest concern was that she may get hurt on the lacrosse field, or even worse, a car accident. Since that terrible morning, I've thought so many times about what could have been done to prevent this horrific loss. An unbearable loss for all of us who loved Yardley, but also a loss for society. She was such a fun-loving, smart, loyal, ambitious, and kind person. Knowing Yardley and her outgoing, confident demeanor, and knowing next to nothing about relationship violence, I found it impossible that something like this could have happened to her. She was loved and respected by all who knew her. It's still impossible for me to understand how anyone could have ever hurt her intentionally with his own 2 hands. During the months after Yardley's death, my daughter Lexie and I, along with other family members, came together to create the One Love Foundation. One was Yardley's jersey number, Love her last name, thus the One Love Foundation. Our first initiative focused on honoring Yardley's memory by recognizing young men and women who, like her, were positive and good members of their community and their teams. Our Unsung Hero Awards are given to student athletes each year that embody the characteristics that made Yard so special. We also built a field in her name at her high school, Yeardley Love lacrosse, and it's special to us that so many young people will grow up knowing her name and her story. When the trial ended in the spring of 2012, our family made a decision to dedicate the foundation's efforts to relationship violence. It was an issue that kept coming to us for 2 years and an issue that we initially tried to avoid. As we began to learn how common relationship violence is, we realized that education and awareness building was needed on a major scale. Our goal was to reduce and eventually eliminate the grim statistics of 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men that experience relationship violence during their lifetime. We need you to help us change attitudes surrounding relationship violence and make it clearly recognizable as the abhorrent behavior that it is. We need you to set the standards and be a role model for those that follow behind you. To date, we've been overwhelmed by the enthusiastic response we've received from your generation. Your involvement is the underpinning of our success. I'm truly grateful to each and every one of you that gave up your precious time today to be here. Again, many, many thanks. And now I'd like to introduce Nick Dima, and he's part of our staff that joined us in July, and he will tell you about the One Love Foundation in much more detail. Thank you so much.
Hello, everybody. My name is Nick, and first off, I want to just thank you, Sharon, for sharing that. Yardley's story is really what keeps us going. Her spirit and character lives on in our work, and what makes this all worth it is knowing that we're doing this to change the culture and end relationship violence, and we can do that. And that's really what I think is the centerfold message of the One Love Foundation, is that this is our generation's issue, and we have the power to take control over it and end it. And that all starts with us right here in this room, standing up for that change. So our goal is to ignite a movement amongst young people towards this change. If we want to change a culture, we need to start talking about the issue. We need to stigmatize the abusive behaviors that are going on every single day and that are normalized. And so that is our mission by bringing the Escalation Workshop and educating young people in this issue. So the first question that I would like to pose is, how prevalent is relationship violence? So, as Sharon said, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men will experience relationship violence during their lifetime. That's an incredibly large number. And for women in particular, between the age of 16 and 24, they're 3 times more likely to experience this. So this is something that's happening a lot, but it's also something that we don't really talk about. And as soon as we hear the term domestic violence, we get this idea in our head of, what does a victim of domestic violence look like? Not me, not a young person. And so when we have that understanding of it, we're much more vulnerable to it because we don't know that it happens to us. So that's why we're trying to create this idea that it is our generation's issue because it's happening to us, and it's happening to us a lot. So what do we do? What can we do? Our campaign for change involves these 3 pieces of educating, empowering, and activating. So the first step is to understand what relationship violence is. And it's much more than physical abuse. I think that's something that we all understand as being part of an abusive relationship is the physical aspect. But there are so many more parts of it that go unspoken, especially emotional and sexual abuse, which is what we are really educating on the signs of what happened. So right now, there's this standard that if you see something, say something, and that's kind of how we deal with issues like this. But if we don't know what we're seeing, how can we say something? And that's why it's so important that we have these conversations. The Escalation Workshop is a catalyst. We start that conversation and then continue it all throughout the semester in all of our colleges so that we can be aware when these signs are happening in our own lives and in the lives of our friends. So the first part of our workshop is that education piece where we show a 38-minute film titled Escalation. College couple, they meet, and it shows the relationship slowly escalate towards being abusive, which is what actually happens. Relationships don't start out abusive. People come off as very charming in the beginning. And so over time, we'll see these red flags, but we don't really think that they're a red flag. We kind of ignore them or throw them off, think that it's just part of being in a relationship. And so what we're doing is stigmatizing those abusive behaviors and showing that no, that's actually unhealthy behavior and not acceptable. So in our second part, we're empowering. We're meeting students where they are in technology and social media. We're talking about this issue in a conversation. So our workshop is 90 minutes. 40 minutes of it are a discussion. It's not a lecture. We're not coming into taking a group of students and just telling them all these statistics. We're incorporating that into an engaging conversation so that they can come to the realizations on their own with one facilitator. So that's why I believe that it's been so successful, because we are actually talking to each other about this issue instead of just being told how to think about it. And so our last piece of the workshop is us activating the students. So this is the really cool part. When we conduct an escalation workshop, we have an audience that hopefully by the end of it are understanding, wow, this is something that we can actually change and something that I've seen happen before. The activation piece allows those students to take their passion and join Team One Love and do something about it. So at the end of the workshop, and what I'll be able to show you guys at the end of the presentation is how we're doing that. And that is training young people to be facilitators. We're giving them the tools that they need to talk about this issue. So again, this is just a quick overview of what our workshop looks like in terms of the timing. And again, here, as was mentioned earlier, on January 31st, we will be bringing the Escalation Workshop to Franklin and Marshall. So I really hope that you guys attend, because it really is an incredible and empowering conversation. Okay, so now what I'm going to show you guys is a short clip that really gives you some good student testimonials of this workshop and really explains the in-depth of what an escalation workshop is.
1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men will experience relationship violence in his or her lifetime. Escalation is our feature film workshop that we're rolling out on campuses across the country.
Hey, hello. Hey. I got you something.
Escalation is a 40-minute film that shows a college relationship from its euphoric beginnings to its tragic ends.
When I saw Chase, it reminded me of a lot of guys that I grew up around with very, very similar personalities.
Paige would definitely be someone that I would associate with at school and even become very close with.
Those people are college students just like us, and they have fun and they go to parties. They act just like any of our friends. That's what makes you realize it's a serious problem.
Each year, there are an estimated 1,200 deaths due to relationship violence. That's more than 3 per day. The Escalation Workshop meets young people where they are by engaging them in a story that's relevant to their lives.
When you're in a relationship, you can be blind to things.
I gotta go. Email me anything else you need.
Sure. He's constantly asking where Paige is and constantly yelling at her when she's not responding.
Paige, don't!
When you're a friend and you're seeing him, you need to kind of understand that it's not something that should be going on.
All I'm saying is mind your own damn business.
Yo, what's your problem, man?
What's my problem, man? What's your...
Honestly, I think people don't know how to react, and people don't know how to intervene when it comes to other people's relationships.
I know.
What the hell?
What? Do I look like I'm having a bad day or something?
I was really taken aback, traumatized. The film really educated me as to what I should be looking out for when I need to protect myself, I guess, or even my friends.
You cheating on me? With Kyle, you cheating on me?
No!
Your phone.
What happened to Paige, I didn't see it coming at all, so it was terrifying.
So you didn't feel that Paige was in any danger at that time?
I just ignored it. I didn't really want to see what was there.
The last scene I thought was the most powerful. Just being able to see the real faces of the victims that have lost their lives to this issue.
We are working so hard to end relationship violence because our family lost someone. I lost someone. Her name was Yardley Love.
Escalation triggers a really meaningful discussion where students are genuinely engaged in talking about the nuanced signs about relationship violence.
I feel like he was just like, I want you to be around me all the time.
You saw the way she was carrying her books at the beginning. She was real closed up.
She only belonged to him, and anything that she did was a result of him.
This movie is very powerful. It's really going to spark a conversation on a topic that hasn't been talked about.
Did you guys think it started quickly at all, or did that seem normal?
There's a lot of content within the relationship is hidden, and that's what makes it really difficult for people to really see what's happening.
I think we never tend to think that things are as serious as they are.
Because it so hits home, and because it was so well received by my team, I really think that this is something that every student at every university should see.
Think about it. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men are victims of their own relationships.
We can do something to stop this together.
I want to see the members of my community be more responsible for each other.
I will help end relationship violence, and I will intervene when I see necessary.
I will help stop relationship violence.
I will act if I see warning signs.
I will help end relationship violence.
If we can save one person, it's worth the work.
So I really like this short clip specifically because of how much it shows what the students are saying, which is a really important part of this workshop because, you know, I can tell you guys how amazing the Escalation Workshop is, but it's really what are the students that are actually going through the workshop saying that counts. So the students are saying some pretty amazing things, and it still just astonishes me to this day how excited students are to go through this workshop, and it just makes it all worthwhile to see this. So as you can see here, 97% of students would recommend the Escalation Workshop to a friend, and over 85% of students want to see this as a mandatory workshop on their campus. So we've received just amazing testimonials. You know, I will check my email and randomly get an email from a student just describing, you know, I just went through the Escalation Workshop today, and I've noticed that I've been seeing this in a friend of mine, a very close friend of mine, for a long time, and I just didn't know what to think of it. I thought that was just their relationship. I would call it off and not know that there was something serious there. So all the time we're hearing about this, and I think the reason why is because it is a movement that's led by students for students, and we're having these important conversations, you know, in their resident halls, in, you know, amongst their sports teams. They're talking to people that they're already very close with, and it's just a lot easier to have that conversation, and it's wonderful to hear all of this. So, how are we bringing this Escalation Workshop to campuses around the nation? So we never want the Escalation Workshop to be a burden on any campus's budget, which is why, you know, we are a nonprofit organization bringing this important education. And through some generous donations through the Jaguars Foundation and the Baltimore Ravens, we've been able to bring this to over 400 colleges and 150 high schools in the past semester free of charge. And so all donations that we receive go directly towards bringing this vital education to schools. And so it's just been really amazing to see how much students have taken ownership over this and how much support we've gotten from so many different schools, as you can see up here. So the next phase is activation. How can we become part of this movement? We have, aside from the Escalation Workshop, 3 other great initiatives that allow us to continue engaging with the One Love Foundation. And so the first that I'm going to talk about is Yards for Yardley. So Franklin and Marshall has already signed up and doing Yards for Yardley this semester, in case you didn't know, which is really just incredible. And so what Yards for Yardley is an initiative that was started by a couple of students last year. They wanted to dedicate their preseason yards for Yardley. And so they ran over 1 million yards in her name. And within a couple of months, over 150 schools had joined this initiative. And so that's exactly what we're trying to do again this year by getting more students involved in running for this good cause. And so we are currently creating an app that will allow you to challenge other teams or get a group of students and you can all contribute your yards together. And so it's going to be a really cool process that will allow people to continue engaging. The second is our new website, which again, I will show you at the end of this presentation, that's customized for every school that we work with. So here, when we're at Franklin and Marshall, you guys have a webpage on joinonelove.org that will be everything Franklin and Marshall with One Love. So it'll show the number of workshops that we're going to be holding, how many facilitators are trained here, and what activities are going on. So that's really going to be a tool that students can use to stay up to date in this movement. And then lastly is our new digital ads campaign, which is really exciting, and I'm going to show you 2 of those videos here. They're incredibly short clips that just try and define the line between love and control. So the name of our campaign is #That'sNotLove. And so what we're trying to do with that hashtag is stigmatize abusive behaviors with pointing them out as that's not love. And so you'll see they're really clear videos that show how certain behaviors can escalate. And our first video is titled Because I Love You, which is an excuse that so many different people use to mask abusive behaviors. I don't want you to hang out with your friend. Just, it's because I care about you. I know that they're not like a good person. Or I'm going to check your phone every single day just because I love you. And I'm a little bit jealous, but it's really just because I care about you. And so we want to point out that these are things that happen all the time and saying that, no, that is an unhealthy behavior. And so I'd like to show you the first one. It's about a minute long that really explains this difference.
Because I love you. I want to be your only guy.
Because I love you, skip class with me. Let's stay in bed today.
Because I love you, I just want to be with you so freaking much.
Because I love you.
I waited for you after Chem Lab.
You were walking with Mark?
Because I love you.
You shouldn't be hanging out with that dude.
You should know how dumb that makes me look.
I don't care if she's your lab partner.
Why do you have texts from him?
Because I love you. This number?
Delete.
Because I love you. This Jason number?
Delete.
And Ben?
Delete.
Because I love you, I should smash your phone.
I'll let you give me your password instead.
Because I love you.
I will check your texts every day.
You got lucky. Because I love you.
Because I love you.
You think it's okay.
Because I love you. You understand.
Because I love you, you stop talking to your classmates. And you feel completely alone.
Because I love you. That's not love.
So as you can see, you can turn a phrase like because I love you, which should be a really good thing, into a very negative thing. And it's unfortunately very convincing. When someone says, it's just because I care about you, we have feelings for the other person that we're in a relationship with. And so it makes sense to us. We want to listen to them. We want to make our partner feel good. It's just a lot easier to just accept what they're saying. And so our goal with these short clips is, again, to stigmatize those behaviors. Because once we talk about them enough, as soon as they come up in our own lives or in the lives of our friends, we will know that, no, it's not because you love me. If you trusted me, you would let me hang out with my friends because that's what trust is. Oftentimes people will say, it's not that I don't trust you, it's I don't trust the other person. If you trust your partner, decisions require 2 people. So trusting is letting your friend have friends, and even letting is the wrong term. It's not on us. They can have any number of friends, and that's totally healthy. So again, these short clips are designed to help us talk about this in a safe space, and that's really what we're going to be using with our hashtag. And people have taken these videos and just shared them so many times, and we've seen such great conversation come out of it. And that's really our goal. We want to create these educational tools that allow students to talk about it in a way that they didn't think about before. And so all of that conversation that's continuing will allow us, again, when we confront this in our own lives, we'll be ready and prepared to talk about it and stand up for ourselves and stand up for others. And so this video was rather serious. It showed a very ominous soundtrack, but some of the videos that we're going to be coming out with show it in a different light, in a more lighthearted way. So we're going to be stigmatizing it in all different approaches. We want to show that it's also very serious, but in another way, we also want to poke fun at some of these things, the difference between I want to spend my time with you and I need to spend my time with you. So we really want to, from every different avenue, show these unhealthy behaviors. And so I just want to give you guys a preview of one more of this campaign, because we are going to be having videos coming out all throughout the upcoming semester that we're giving to students so that they can use and take ownership over Team One Love at their school.
Because I love you? Sure. We can hang out with your friends tonight.
Because I love you, we'll just have a few drinks.
Because I love you, I will have 3 double whiskeys.
Because I love you tonight is awesome.
Because I love you.
Why are you spending so much time with Jenny?
Are you flirting with her?
Because I love you,
I storm out of the bar
And leave you all by yourself. I go down the street and I get wasted.
I make out with some dude.
Paul, Pete, whatever.
in front of everybody.
Because I love you.
You deserve to know what it feels like to be disrespected.
Because I love you.
I'm so sorry. I was wasted.
Because I love you.
I text, I can't live without you.
I wait for you after class.
I'm standing here in the rain.
Because I love you, I yell at your window.
No one will ever love you as much as I do.
Because I love you.
You open your front door.
Because I love you, you listen as I cry.
You hug me and say that it's okay. And you take all the blame.
Because I love you.
That's not love.
So our goal is to create as much content as possible because there are so many different things to talk about, and it's a way to keep this fresh so that people continue wanting to talk about it. And so that's really what we're doing with the That's Not Love campaign. And I just think it's really incredible that we'll be able to offer all of these tools to our students. So the last thing that I would like to talk about is how can you help? So there are a lot of different things that are involved in joining Team One Love, and there are so many different ways to help out. On all college campuses throughout the United States, we are recruiting dedicated student leaders that want to champion this on their campus. And so what that looks like is getting trained to be a facilitator, which takes only 1 hour. And with that, you can host as many escalation workshops in your communities as you would like. And us at the One Love Foundation will act as your resource. We will be with you every step of the way to show you, okay, let's target residence life. Let's see if we can get escalation workshops going there, or possibly an orientation process. We have the experience and can show you, okay, here are the avenues that you can go down, and then students take that and run with it. We've seen them create their own advertising campaigns. They've created a poster project where they've written on a sheet of paper, #That'sNotLove, written these excuses and taking pictures and spreading it online. We've seen some really amazing creativity going into this, and that's because we give the educational tools to the students. So that's really what we're looking for, is student leaders that want to be able to join this movement and champion it. And it's a super simple process, and that's why it's so exciting that you guys can be a part of it. So again, supporting our work, getting behind Team One Love. You can share our content online. If you look up #That'sNotLove on YouTube, you can see the videos there, on Facebook, and sharing our content so that more and more people can see this important education. And 2 is expanding our reach. So if you know someone that wants to get involved, like maybe you're a little bit nervous about taking on this project, but you know someone close to you that is really, would champion this, reach out to them and say, hey, I learned about this really awesome initiative. Do you want to learn a little bit more? And that's really how we've been able to grow, is by people talking about this and getting more involved. And so what I would like to show you is the website specific to Franklin and Marshall, which is what it actually looks like to get more involved with the One Love Foundation. So here, as you can see, we have Team One Love at F&M and our nice background photo. So is anyone in the audience in this picture? I'm just kind of curious. But when we host a workshop, at the end of the workshop, we always bring up this website, which allows students to, join the school and stay involved. Staying involved can be anything from, just keeping up to date with our newsletter that we're going to be showing to you guys and saying, here's what's happening at F&M. You can share our content, look at what activities are going on, possibly join another workshop and go through this process again and continue talking about it. Again, being trained as a facilitator. So there are so many different ways of getting involved, and this is what it's looked like, is creating this and taking ownership over it, which is why I think it's so awesome that, again, January 31st, we'll be coming back to host this, and so I really hope that you guys attend. So with that being said, those are all the incredible initiatives that we are creating here at the One Love Foundation, and so I want to thank you guys so much for having us here, and I would love to take some questions if you guys have any.
My name's Marcy. I went to Towson High School. I grew up in Baltimore. So a lot of my best friends went to NDP when everything was happening. It was definitely hard to watch. I am involved in the Women's Center on campus, and also I help run the Sexual Assault and Violence Education sort of group on campus. And one of the biggest things I think that the hardest thing to do is sort of have people connect to these stories without having survivors or victims having to like overshare. And one of the great things I love about the Yards for Yeardley is how involved you can make it for all people instead of making it just like a women's issue. But one of the things I wanted to ask you about was, as a Baltimorean, dealing with the Ray Rice fallout, especially like on campus. A lot of people who I even went to high school with who participated in Yards for Yeardley, I found it was very difficult for them to address the Ray Rice situation and talk about domestic violence in a more open capacity relating to celebrities. So I was just wondering if you had any tips on how to like better discuss with people, bring it on campus, a discussion about celebrities and violations of personal safety and everything.
Do you want to do the first one? So in terms of opening that conversation, I think the first step is creating a space to talk about it. So whenever we want to talk about relationship violence in particular, or any real issue, you have to set aside time and know that, okay, this is what we're going to be talking about. So that's why, specifically with the workshop, we say, okay, we're dedicating this amount of time to specifically talk about it. So in the case of, if you wanted to discuss celebrities in this issue, saying that, okay, let's have an open and honest conversation and lay out the process that we want to talk about. And the best thing that you can do in any of these situations is just being open about how you feel about it. And so I think that is kind of correlated with our workshop in particular, because our film doesn't really show, celebrities, but it's all really the same issue, because we idolize celebrities, it's just a little bit more complicated of a problem, but it really gets down to the same thing of how we view relationship violence and, how we talk about it, which is why I think it's really important to be trained in, okay, how can we talk about this in a way that doesn't alienate others, in a way that really doesn't dismiss the issue as something lesser, because it is really prevalent and incredibly important. So making sure that, regardless of who we're talking about, knowing that relationship violence is an incredibly serious issue and these behaviors that are unhealthy are as serious as they are. So I think that's really important, is just emphasizing, regardless of who the subject is, it's still the same issue and showing that it's always still important.
I'd like to just add one thing too. If you have a friend that's in a bad situation, a bad relationship, we've talked to mothers whose daughters have, I haven't talked to anybody with a son, but I have talked to mothers with daughters that are in a very abusive situation, and the daughter's in love and doesn't want to leave the situation, and her friends are so concerned and have went to the school and it starts to they alienate them. She starts saying, "I hate you," and so their tendency is like, "I did what I could. If you hate me, bye." But that's exactly what the abuser wants you to do, because that just alienates you further. So if you do have a friend that is pushing you away and saying they hate you or whatever, stick with them. They really need you more now than they ever will. And if you do leave them and walk away, the abuser wins.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Molly. I'm a senior. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the differences, maybe statistically or like trends or something like that, in terms of whether there's same-sex couples, if it's like a man being the abuser, a woman being the abuser, like things like that.
Yeah, so we don't specifically have a lot of statistics around that, because there hasn't been a lot of research done in that respect. But in our manual, in the end, we have an appendix which goes over the general statistics of that. And if I'm remembering correctly, the LGBT community is actually experiencing this at a higher rate. So what we do know is that it happens amongst all genders, all sexualities, all racial classes, and socioeconomic classes. So it's not an issue that leaves anybody out. So I'm not a specific expert on that community in general, but it does happen in all relationships, and we've seen cases, and I've talked to students of all different, whatever sexuality or gender, all classes. So it happens to all of us. And what's great is that we can still talk about it in the same way. There are definitely differences that we have to acknowledge, and we're working towards addressing those, but we can still talk about it in terms of knowing the signs, because the signs are going to be the same. Being overly jealous, being controlling, isolation, all of these things are still going to relate. So I can say that it does definitely happen to all of us, but I don't have the specific answer to that.
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm a junior, and I was just wondering if it seems like focused on college, but is there anything in your organization that educates at the high school level? Because I know a lot of people who have experienced violence in high school relationships.
Yes, our program is geared towards 16 to 24-year-olds, so we go into as many high schools as we possibly can. Sometimes with some of the public high schools, it's harder to get into because their schedules are so tight. But everything we've done has been geared to 16 to 24, and we realize the need for the high schools. And actually, eventually, we hope to go back into the middle schools, because I think a tad bit of it even starts then.
Hi, my name's Ellen. I'm a freshman here. I'm actually from Charlottesville, and I was in 8th or 9th grade when this happened, so I kind of went into high school with this incident kind of like fresh in my memory. But I was wondering if there are any resources, say I do have a friend that gets in trouble, if there are any resources I can point him or her towards to get them out of this situation, because I know you're talking about recognizing the signs, but what do you do after that if it's really hard to get them out of the situation?
We might have different research. Well, number one is the domestic hotline is available 24/7, and you can either speak or text. Also, we recommend that you go to the school counselor and inform them of what's happening and get as much support behind you to bolster you to handle what's going on with your friend. And Nick, probably.
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to expand on that. So I think there's really two sides to that. So if you're in an abusive relationship, definitely reaching out to, there's Love is Respect, there's the National Domestic Violence Hotline. So there are professional resources. And being trained as an escalation facilitator doesn't make us a professional resource. But there is that entire other side of, if we're a friend of someone that's in an abusive relationship, and that person might not recognize that they actually are in it, because again, we don't really talk about the signs, so we might not often recognize that we're in an unhealthy relationship. What can we do to help in addition to that? So being supportive of our friends can be difficult at times. If you're talking to someone who's in an unhealthy relationship, oftentimes they're not going to immediately recognize it, and it's very easy to become frustrated and think, it's so clear to me as a third-party observer that what you're going through is an abusive relationship. But if we force our friends to get out of their relationship and we're pushing them, we're kind of mirroring the behaviors of an abuser. So being supportive is being open, allowing that person to talk to you open and honestly, knowing that you're not going to judge them, you're not going to push them to take any action that they're not ready to take. So that's incredibly important, but also really difficult, because we really just want to help our friends in that situation. But keeping in mind that being supportive looks a lot more like letting the other person talk and listening than forcing them to do something that they might not be ready to do. But it's always important to emphasize that here are the professional resources, like we talked about. So again, it all comes down to just saying something. If you think something is going on, reach out to that friend, or say something to maybe like the school counselor who can reach out and do something in a professional way.
There's one other thing too that I should never have forgotten. We developed an app called My Plan, or Danger Risk Assessment app, with Hopkins University, and 25 years of experience from their part. And everything is statistically sound. And it asks the risk assessment asks 20 questions. And at the end, it gives you a score, and then it tells you what that score means. So if you have a high score and you're at imminent risk, then you really need to encourage somebody to do something quickly. If their score is lower, it doesn't mean it's not going to be higher in a week or 2 weeks, but it's something that you can monitor. And if you are in a relationship that's bad, you can go to My Plan, which includes the risk assessment, plus it gives you a plan to exit. The most dangerous time is when you leave a relationship. That Yardley had left her relationship, and they were about to graduate, so everything escalates to it's either now or never. And so when you leave a relationship, this plan gives you a set plan to do, not to just walk out and leave and be vulnerable. You make plans and then you leave. So, and that's free, and it's on our website, and also it's an app on any iPhone or whatever smartphone you have.
Hi, my name's Ailey. I'm an HA at the school. We're the equivalent of the RAs, and we run orientation. I really value this conversation, and I think it should be incorporated. However, orientation is so short, and it's really hard for people to absorb all the content we throw at them already. So would this conversation belong in the same place as the conversation about consent, or does consent belong within this conversation?
So that's a really great question. And just consent in general, I think people oftentimes don't understand that when you're in a relationship, it doesn't mean that you're consenting to everything that happens. And so consent is a huge part of relationship violence. Relationship violence goes, there's the physical, there's emotional, and there's sexual violence. So in our workshop, we talk about all these different facets. And so I think it's a great place to couple these together because it is such a huge part. And people, because there is this stigma, I need to please my partner, we oftentimes don't speak up if something like this happens because we think, am I just being difficult? I don't feel comfortable talking about this because we don't know what's acceptable. But again, like I said, it all comes down to being in a relationship doesn't give automatic consent. So any conversation about consent is a great time to talk about this as well.
Thank you.
So I would actually like to elaborate a little bit on the question that came over here about high schools. So we are working with a lot of high schools, and specifically the Baltimore Ravens and Jacksonville Jaguar grant was to bring these to high schools. And so it's incredibly important that we bring this education on earlier because that's when we learn, behaviors that are acceptable, habits that might stick with us for our entire lives. And so that's why we're really working to try and bring this to colleges because it's definitely an amazing time and students have a lot more free time to be able to work on this, but it's also really important to bring it on earlier because that's when we make these realizations. So I think we have time for one more question if anybody else has one. All right, well, thank you guys so much for having us here today. We really appreciate it. Oh, we have one more question.
I'm a student here, David Song. So I was curious, what do you do if you know a friend who is the abusive person? Even if it doesn't erupt in any hot violence sort of way, if you start seeing signs, what do you do?
Awesome question. Do you want me to answer? Okay, so great question. What about the other side? Again, this is part of our workshop, so we do touch on it just to make that note. If you know someone who might be an abuser, there are definitely a couple of things to do. One, the National Domestic Hotline, they take both sides. If you are a victim in this situation or an abuser, there are resources for both sides. Oftentimes we don't think that it's that way, but they will be able to connect you to the correct resource. But if we're a friend and we're not a professional, again, what can we do? It comes down to saying something. So one part that's in our workshop is speaking up. If someone you know says something that might indicate that maybe they're mistreating their partner and it doesn't sit well with you, saying something to them and letting them know, hey, that makes me uncomfortable, or can you elaborate a little bit more on what you said, so that you let them know that behavior isn't acceptable, which is really comes down to a lot of what we're doing with the That's Not Love campaign. We're stigmatizing that behavior. And so if you know someone that is an abuser, talking to them about it can be very powerful to let them know, that's not how you should treat another person. if you get down on their level and talk to them in a way that, again, isn't judgmental, because you don't want to alienate them either. You want to have the ability to help them. So talking to them and saying, that didn't make me feel comfortable. Can we talk about this a little bit more? Having that conversation is an incredibly powerful way. And again, directing resources is always an option too. Well, again, thank you guys so much for having us here. It was really a pleasure.